The Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely encountered even in millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning. Oh, I was supposed to do that. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name's Joren, and I'm a senior student at the Village Zendo. And it is wonderful to be here with all of you today and with all of you online. Thank you for tuning in. Roshi Shinryu reminded me last night that we have a lot of new students here with us on this retreat, whether it's the half or the full week. And, you know, for all of you especially, and for all of us, I just want to say here on the second full day of retreat, I hope everyone is settling in and starting to feel a sense of the support of this container, even if it's new to you and seems strange. Roshi Shinryu spoke on our first evening here about the falling snow. Each of us a snowflake with its own unique crystalline structure, falling on its own path, and then landing to become collectively the snow. Shuso spoke to us today about noticing every nuance of what we are experiencing, not squandering this precious opportunity to focus our attention. So I hope that each of us, each of you, are finding your own way to allow the space of attention to unfold, to see what's here. When Roshi Shinryu asked me to give a Dharma talk during retreat, I was motivated to say yes. I have not given a Dharma talk in a while, and I wanted to step up. At the same time, I knew that I was trading off some long-awaited downtime. The chance to drift a little bit leading up to the holiday before retreat. It's been a long semester of commuting and teaching and multitasking, and I was longing just to drift, to get in the car for the annual 2-day road trip to Michigan to hang out with the family, eat, shop, ramble. But preparing to give a Dharma talk for me means a fair amount of advanced prep. We might call it a ritual of thinking, study, overthinking, editing. I am in awe of those who are able to talk more spontaneously, but I confess I am not there yet. So when I agreed to give a talk for today, I anticipated I would have to rev up in order to write the talk. and lose out on some quality drifting time. Thinking this way is, of course, already dividing my activity. I'm dividing my activity into working and resting, working on a talk, and drifting. Maybe someday I'll be able to give a Dharma talk that's more like drifting. Or maybe this talk will be a sublimated drift. For now, preparing for a Dharma talk puts me through cycles of birth and death, self-clinging and letting go. So the reading for this Ango period is 2 chapters of Dogen's Shobogenzo, Undivided Activity and Birth and Death. It's interesting to pair these 2 chapters together because the chapter Undivided Activity actually also addresses birth and death and non-separation of birth and death. And so both chapters are focusing on practicing in this moment the practicing of birth and death. We're living with so much death in our public discourse these days. Not exactly that there is more death than ever, but maybe more of a lethal threat in our public discourse. People are more overtly threatened with death through detainment, refusal of asylum, loss of vital care and support, criminalization of identity and nationality, loss of employment and livelihood, loss of human rights, condoning of abuse and violation, and an overall sense of losing the value of everyday life. So it's hard not to become overwhelmed in this lethal moment. But to get back to the study text, as Roshi Shinryu talked about yesterday, the title of the chapter, Undivided Activity, is a translation from the Japanese word zenki. And he also shared other translations. Zenki translated as the whole works and total dynamic function. So, undivided activity is the whole works, where there is no separating birth and death. The whole works is realization, when birth is totally manifested at every moment, and death is totally manifested at every moment. So one thing that divides us from realizing such moment-by-moment manifestation of birth and death might be our stories about birth and death. We come to retreat for the opportunity to practice letting go of our stories, our scatterings and wanderings, as Shuso put it so aptly this morning. Creating a little space for the flow of stories as we sit, we can see them come up again and again. We practice paying attention to our stories, acknowledging them and letting them go. In undivided activity, Dogen says, birth neither comes nor goes. Birth neither appears nor is already existing. Thus, birth is totally manifested and death is totally manifested. Undivided activity is birth right now. Another translation of Zenki is total dynamic function. The total dynamic function of birth in this moment is just the opening up of this moment. Not so much birth on a narrative timeline preceding death, or birth as the opposite of death, but the birth of this moment itself. So storytelling is a form of attention that generally moves toward cause and effect and a conclusion, implying a subject that's telling the story and an object that the story is happening to. Total dynamic functioning includes our stories, and at the same time, involves letting go of the story and the storyteller. Birth is totally manifested, and death is totally manifested. One of my stories about this moment: my knee hurts. I tripped and fell on it a while back, and then re-injured it a month ago, dragging something too heavy for me, can finally admit it, home on the subway, up and down the subway stairs. My knee hurting sets the storytelling in motion. I fear it may not get better. The story gets more elaborate. I'm losing my mobility and may be on a downward slope, never to get back my mobility for the rest of my life. I went to have it looked at, x-rayed, and had physical therapy, but it still hurts. The trouble my hurt knee is causing me definitely gets worse when I tell myself this story. My fear of the end of the story, the end of my mobility, makes it difficult to experience what exactly is happening with my knee injury in this moment. The story makes it difficult to experience the whole works right now. I fear I won't be able to make it through the retreat. Stories, of course, can be delightful. Another thing about this moment for me: last week my partner Deborah, our 18-year-old Astrid, and I drove to Michigan for the holiday, as we do every year. Deb and I notice it's suddenly fun to take this long trip with Astrid. She is being delightful and considerate and sharing so much with us. Traditionally, this trip has had its ups and downs, usually having to lean in to keep Astrid happy, keep her moving, deal with her moods, pry her off her devices. We know she's been growing up a lot lately, but having this annual car trip as a check-in really shows us just how much. The rare and wonderful revelation. The story gives us so much pleasure, birth, fully manifesting birth. Another story. After a year of sabbatical from my job, I returned to teaching this fall. In the year that I was away, the impact of AI, artificial intelligence, went from being something I was observing happening in the world to becoming something having more immediate impact on me and my students and on myself as a teacher. I teach media arts, and I am a media artist. My work tends towards the lyrical, with a current experimental digital media project that involves storytelling about a specific place. Recently, I went to an electronic arts conference to present this project. I hadn't been to this conference in many years. I realized that while I was looking elsewhere with undivided activity, the digital media arts world had recentered itself around artificial intelligence. Whether critiquing AI as a dystopian vision or using its powerful processes in great display, AI has become the anxious obsession of the electronic arts world. How could I have missed this? My absorption in my own storytelling helped me look past the story unfolding in my field. AI is an anxiety-ridden topic at every level of our society these days. We're told endlessly of its power. It is presented as a tool for our use that will effortlessly and instantly accomplish most of our work as humans. Whether we want to use it or not, we are told it will do our work better than we can, so why bother? Why continue to pretend our work has value? Economies and professions are anticipated to hollow out. Returning from a year away, I attempted to bring the discussion of AI into my classes with students who are filmmakers and media artists. I thought that talking about it would help. Understanding the issues, the aesthetic possibilities, the ethical critique, the independent subcultures using AI differently. I was not prepared for the defensive reaction from students. To them, AI is the death of the professions they aspire to, they are training for, the substitution of AI's slop for the exciting, painstaking, collaborative productions they aspire to. Talking about it was all but futile. It was difficult to separate out the future visions of the marketing and hype of the corporate AI industry from the idea of what is actually happening and true right now. Students are understandably frightened and angry on this topic. But the more we talked about it, we were able to separate out AI as a commercial force, as distinct from artists using AI to comment on the state of things. The more we talked about it, the more students became interested in what AI could be in different hands. They need to be able to look at it with insight and compassion for themselves, and not just anger and fear. In working on this talk, I came across a series of essays on the Shobogenzo Zenki, or undivided activity, by a practitioner named Ko-an Franz, who leads practice at a Sangha in Nova Scotia. These 5 essays on Zenki are titled Nothing But Birth and Death. Ko-an Franz writes, in this text, as with any text of Dogen's, I think, there's a degree to which he is calling people to practice. But to an equal degree, he is simply describing how things are and saying, notice that, engage in that. You don't have to make it something. You don't have to alter it or clean it or tidy it up. You have to show up, see the moment for what it is, and touch it. How to just notice that, the relentless undermining of the creative professions that young people aspire to. In the cacophony of the moment, the lethal discourse, how to remain present and active, how to continue to notice and touch the manifestation of birth. The story of technology in our society is, on one level, the story of one group overpowering another by means of superior tools. This story has become so normalized in our society that the brutality of it is regarded as inevitable. How to step away from this story, just slightly, to see the moment for what it is and touch it. In the late 1980s, the village Zendo founding abbot, our own Enkyo Roshi, was one of the founding members of a grad program at NYU that foresaw the massive shift that would be caused by the convergence of media and computers. A shift that really took off during the 1990s dot-com boom. Roshi and her colleagues were engaged in creating an interdisciplinary laboratory environment that would train students to use these new internet-powered tools in ways that would generate community, sustain social values, and feed creative practices. I first became Roshi's student at the Village Zendo in the early 90s. Then a few years later, I also attended the grad program where Roshi taught and had such a formative influence. I absorbed the program's message of using the new corporate tools with an intention to repurpose them toward more life-sustaining and artistic practices. Roshi and her grad program were teaching something about trying to understand the total dynamic function of the new tools of commercial media, separate from their corporate uses. Trying to find ways to use them differently than intended in the mainstream. For example, to use them to empower a rural community of senior citizens to produce stories and transmit them on their own media network, to use these tools of interactivity to engage differently abled people in embodied storytelling, to engage the poetics of GPS transmission in a sonic hiking experience. What Roshi was doing as a researcher and teacher of interactive media was something like existing in muddy water with purity like the lotus, offering a social and aesthetic approach, whether students were moving to become independent artists or headed into industry jobs with cutting-edge skills and practices. One of the missions of the program was to plant the seeds of humanistic awareness in the startups and corporations that were rapidly taking off. A quixotic mission. Roshi had a health crisis and retired from her teaching position as I was finishing the program. This was a turning point for her to dedicate herself full-time to the village Zendo Sangha. I got the feeling that she never looked back. In the ascendancy of Silicon Valley, she took another path, and her attention shifted completely to teaching the Dharma. I hope that it's okay with Roshi Enkyo that I brought up this ancient history in my Dharma talk today. She doesn't really talk much about that history and her impact of total dynamic functioning with the Sangha of art plus technology students back in the 1990s as the world was undergoing a radical change. Here in the first Village Zendo Winter Ango without her, I've been drifting into the experience of coming to retreat, to sit with all the stories and dynamics of everyday life, experiencing what I have brought with me and practicing letting it go, just to be here. Roshi is here, and her vibrant and fearless example of practicing on the knife edge of birth and death is here. She's here in every aspect of the practice and the Sangha, all of us, and the retreat and its structure, the way we do things. I'm so profoundly grateful for her teaching of practicing the total dynamic function on this knife edge of birth and death in the manifestation of every moment and of this moment. Chant